With me are two women who've tracked the India-US relationship as it has evolved over the years. Nicole Berner, who's a Democrat and a political analyst, and Aparna Pandey, a fellow at the Hudson Institute. Welcome to both of you. Nicole, let me begin with you. There is a presidential election next year, and Joe Biden is seeking a second term. And from the looks of it, it will be a repeat of the contest that we saw the last time. Given this context, how much does a relationship with India and Modi help the US president domestically?
Well, look, there's nothing more presidential than your foreign policy relationships, right? So being the incumbent has its advantages, part of which is you are the person in the room. Your administration is the one brokering the deals. And this can be a really big asset because a lot of times Democrats are attacked about what they don't do on national defense. And a huge focal point of these meetings is going to be about what are we going to be building together? How is the U.S. going to become a more integral part of India and their defense mechanisms, and maybe hopefully bringing them away from Russia and having a better relationship with us, which ultimately factors into a lot of his policies around what have we done in Ukraine, what have we spent there. So could be potentially a really big meeting for Joe Biden to actually then turn and use to talk to the American people about why he is their best interest internationally as well as domestically.
Right. Use the right word vis-a-vis Russia, hopefully. Aparna Pandey, Prime Minister Modi, in his 9 years in office, has dealt with or worked with three American presidents, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden. And we've seen a great relationship in terms of at least optics with all three of them. But in which dispensation do you think the maximum work was done to foster and to further the relationship with India?
Then we could actually go back to the 1990s, because I believe President Clinton started the real relationship between India and US. So I'd say every president since President Clinton for the last 2 decades has pushed the relationship with India. They've believed that India's rise is good for the United States, with a very strategically altruistic policy that India rises economically, militarily, and there's a deeper bond between the two countries, and it's good for the US. But of the last three, I would say President Biden has put a strategic bet on India. He has championed the ties with India right from the first time he entered office. He has wooed India. He would like India to, yes, as the other guest mentioned, to wean India away from dependence on Russia. But a large part of it also is to provide support to India and to be with India vis-a-vis the aggression from China. To have India and the US together in the Indo-Pacific strategy, in Quad, and the other mini-laterals that the US and India have together, and finally to deepen the people-to-people partnership, which is the core of the relationship.
Do you see a coherence in the approach of Washington, D.C. and New Delhi vis-a-vis China? I know that both the countries see China as a challenge, but India also shares a border, and that is a reality that we cannot wish away. So do you see China being central to the conversations and more convergences in the approach to dealing with China?
Strategically, yes. What tactically India does, India will do. So India, sort of even on the land border, India knows that India is alone. But India has received a lot of intelligence input from the United States over the last 3 years, a lot of defense, part of all the foundational agreements that the two countries signed. India has used that for the land border. In the maritime domain, there is a closer partnership. So yes, India does not want to provoke China, but India knows that China watches every time an Indian or an American leader meet. And so very often symbolism is the best deterrence. You don't need to fight a country to deter a country.
Staying with the China question, as we speak, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Beijing to, if nothing else, at least keep the conversation going with the Chinese. What are Washington's expectations from New Delhi or from this relationship with New Delhi vis-a-vis China?
Well, look, I think that there is a lot of common ground in your enemy and my enemy, so we're friends, right? That's a lot of what's going on here. The U.S. is keeping those conversations open, obviously having the Secretary of State do those meetings, but there is a common ground in U.S. politics between Democrats and Republicans that China is a problem that we must deal with. And how to deal with it? may have some different perspectives from the different political parties, but there is a lot of common ground on having a relationship that is strengthened with India in order to deal with our problem of China, because that's not going to go away. The drones that flew over the U.S., that's been a burden politically on President Biden and his administration. So this is really important in how we're going to move forward with our relationship in China.
This is a part of this conversation that has been going on back in New Delhi, that for President Joe Biden, who declared America is back as he took office, he's not really registered a foreign policy win, from Iran, where the nuclear deal is still far from done, to Ukraine, to the difficult relationship with China and everything in between. So do you think that this is, in terms of foreign policy, also very significant for this administration to, as the Americans would like to put it, to pull India into their camp?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, look, you have to remember, Joe Biden spent a lot of years in the Senate as the Foreign Affairs Chairman / ranking member. I mean, this is what he really loves and wants to be doing. But we had a lot domestically going on when he took over in 2020. Not just what the whole world was facing with COVID and how to address that, but a lot of economic problems that Trump and his administration had sent America into. So he had to really focus on making sure and dealing with the jobs issues and some economic problems domestically. And I think now we're seeing inflation on the way down. We're seeing hugely bipartisan deals like the infrastructure investment that Republicans spent years trying to pass, and now the investment starting to be put into the states, and those jobs and that economic reward happening. And he can turn some more of his attention to this foreign policy and flex his muscles there and start to show the American people why, not just domestically, but internationally, he's the choice for them.
We've seen a lot of American engagement in the Indo-Pacific in the recent months, and some of the leaders from there also coming here. So the South Korean president was here, and within a few weeks, we see American warships in the region. The Filipino leader was here, and then America gets bases in the Philippines. They go to Papua New Guinea, and the next thing you know, you have unimpeded access to bases. I think that is the expectation largely from across American administrations, that you start working with somebody who would dangle the defense technology or whatever, those carrots, and then you are going to get something in return in terms of concessions. Is that the expectation now, or has America made peace with the idea that India follows strategic autonomy and will work towards a multipolar world?
In the American administrations have made peace, bipartisan. The Republicans and Democrats know that India is never going to be a security ally or a military ally or even an ally. India likes to be called a friend, partner, BFF, but not an ally. And so India will never do that. The Quad is not Asian NATO. Quad and Malabar are two separate entities. And the US does not expect bases or ask for bases in South Asia, none of the countries. So that's not what the US is looking for. What the US is looking for is for India to build its own capabilities. And the US is offering the technology, because not only will it help wean, to some extent, wean India away from Russia, but provided a basket of partners to purchase military equipment, but just build India's capacity. So the U.S. administrations have made peace with that. There is no hope. There's no desire for a base. Sort of the only extent of sort of a quid pro quo comes in the foundational agreements, where Indian ships can get refueled from an American carrier and American ships from an Indian. But that's like, you and me. If I go to your home, you will give me a glass of water, and when you come to mine, I'll give you one as well. It's not that you get to stay in my house free of cost or for payments either.
Right. And to the question that I asked Nicole, does the Biden administration see this relationship with India as some sort of foreign policy win?
Yes, it does. And if you notice, some months ago when Tata, when Air India or Air Tata announced the purchase of Boeing, the White House actually issued a statement, because we 220 planes, I believe, that Air India was going to purchase. And so investment by Indian companies or purchase by Indian companies of American equipment, creates jobs, helps the American economy. And so for any president, you win on domestic politics and economy. Foreign policy can help you do that. And so the India-US partnership can help the American economy just as it helps the Indian economy. And it can help both the American president but also the Indian Prime Minister next year in his elections.
Right. Nicole, I've been interacting with a cross-section of people here, including many from the Indian community, and they have expectations. They also sounded quite proud of how things have evolved between the two countries. As a Democrat, as an observer of the politics here, do you see a rise in the political stature of the Indian American over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we are seeing it's a population that is growing in the country, and also we're seeing their political rise in, we've had a Congressional Black Caucus and a Congressional Hispanic Caucus, and there's been a lot of coverage about what they've done and how much that has grown, but we've seen the Asian Pacific Islander Indian American Caucus grow in its political power, which then manifests itself out through the country. So we've seen more Indian Americans elected, but also becoming part of the political conversations, and those PACs, because whether you like it or not, a lot of American politics runs on those political action committees, become more and more powerful.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your insights as we try to make sense of what's happening here and connect the dots to tell our viewers across the world the full story of Modi's state visit to the US and what it means for the relationship between America and India.